Surprise, surprise. Still in Romans. Yeah, we've been in Romans a minute all throughout it. And we've been talking about salvation, of course. Last week we had a very lively discussion about being called to life in the Spirit and what that means, how we should be changed by that, how we have to make the decision to heed to that, and walk it out in our daily lives. Pastor Marion was telling us that it can't be both. It's got to be either or. Today, we're going to go a little bit further into that. It's called, the title of this week's lesson is Called to Mutual Acceptance. Mutual acceptance. What do we mean? What does mutual acceptance mean? Anybody know? Want to take a guess? Cleon, then Aiden.
Agreeing to whatever the subject matter is.
Okay. Agreeing. All right. What do you think?
It means like you kind of, because it's like if you didn't say, you said mutual, so like you don't agree with it, but you like accept it, like you're okay with, you don't agree with it, but you let it happen.
Okay.
So it's like,
okay, we letting it happen. We might agree with it, we might not, but we're letting it happen. What do you think?
Mutual acceptance. I feel like, because if we have like a mutual agreement, it's like we agree on the same thing. So I guess like we accept the same thing, or we mutual, it's the same. We both agree, we both think of the same thing. Mutual, same, acceptance. So I'm thinking we are accepting the same thing, or the same thing is being accepted, or something like that.
Okay. So how would we put it in the context of people? Other people.
Other people?
People that may or may not be like us.
They agree with what we're doing, but they don't want to do it. Or,
Okay, they might agree with what we're doing, but they don't want to do it. How do we think? Mutual acceptance. People.
Like paying taxes.
Can you define mutual?
Let's look it up. Okay, it says a feeling of or acceptance. What does it say? Somebody read it. I can't see it.
Feeling or action experienced or done by each of two or more parties toward the other.
Or others.
Or others.
Okay. So what does that mean? Yep, that's the word I was looking for. That reciprocal or reciprocity word.
You want to go hear that from us.
Held in common by two or more parties. Interchangeable. Give and take. Give and take. Mutual. Reciprocity. You give some, you take some. Mutual. Yeah. So it's like a give and take. Mutual, experienced or done by each of two or more parties towards the other or others. A partnership based on mutual respect. So we're both doing the same thing. Mutual is like we're both a part of it. You and I are doing it together.
I feel the only thing I can think of is like doing something bad.
Okay, we might have a mutual interest in breaking the law. So you need money, I need money, so we're going to go both rob people. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it's mutual. It's not necessarily a context of good or bad. It's just mutual. We're trying to figure out mutual, okay? So when we're talking about people and we're thinking about mutual acceptance, it's kind of like I want you to accept me, so I'm going to accept you.
oh, I see. Okay.
You see what I mean? Like we're going to both have to, you accept me, I accept you. A mutual acceptance. Now, we might not agree. I don't agree with you necessarily. I may agree, I may not agree, but I'm going to accept you. And then in return, you may not agree, or you might disagree with me not accepting or accepting you, but you're going to accept me. You see what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to agree with what I'm doing. You don't have to have a feeling one way or another about what I'm doing, but you should still accept me, and I'm going to accept you.
So it's kind of like
That's
an
kind
indifference.
of catch-22, though. It's kind of catch-22.
Yeah. So how is that? How is it a catch-22?
Because what is that saying that you always say when two people,
You can't walk together unless you agree.
right? And then when CJ gave the example about if somebody, you gave the example about robbing bank, two bad people.
Mm-hmm.
In the court of law, you the driver may not even stole anything, but you was with them, so you know what they're doing.
Yeah, we agree.
The exact amount of time
Yeah, but
you accepted it.
right. So that's why it's not acceptance and agreeing is the same. It's gotta, because you can't, like, I don't want you to put a context. If you say agree, then that means we're making it either good or bad. But this can't be a context. It just has to be. You see what I'm saying? It's just got to be something that is. Because like I said, it's not a judgment thing. If we're saying I agree or whatever, it's not necessarily to the level of judging, it's just to the level of accepting. I think we want to throw that you word out there. It's a you word too that has to do with it. Pastor Allen?
Like, it makes me think about a football team.
Okay.
A football team has a mutual understanding that they want to win every game.
Okay.
You know, but they might not like or agree with everything the coach says, but okay, the coach is the man, so we have to do what he tells us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we can achieve this one goal, so everybody's in the same mindset.
Right.
You know, so they have mutually agreed to accept the directions of the coach.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like Jaguars, they came, we have a mutual agreement that we're going to sign Nick Foles. For that kind of money?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but.
Right. We in it. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Destiny?
Oh,
I was gonna say, it just makes me think about, because I have like multiple mutual acceptances, I guess. But like, because I have people that I talk to that I don't agree with anything that they're doing. Like, I don't like it. But we're cool, because I want them to accept me and not bash me, so I don't bash them. And we can be in a nice space together. Like, people that just do things that are against my religion, they don't believe in my religion, I go to school with them, but we cool. So it's kind of like, I'm not gonna say nothing about what you do, don't say nothing about what I believe in, but we here type thing. It's like, but then I don't want to use the word accept, because it's like, I guess that's what you would use, but I don't think you're right, but I'm gonna be, you're here. You know?
And that's why we say accept and not agree.
Right.
What do you have? Yeah.
Instead of actually shaking hands.
Yeah. So what do you say, Pastor Mary? And then we'll come back to Cleon.
I just think it reminds me also of different type of relationships you have, similar to what Justin is saying, but you have different relationships in your life. Some relationships could be complicated, so, as far as people who you deal with on a day-to-day thing, but I think about the people I supervise. We have a mutual acceptance, but we don't always agree. Mm-hmm. And then there's times when we do, but I have to respect them, then they respect me, and so to me it reminds me of the different type of relationships you might have. Mm-hmm. And like how it says up there, it's a give and take. Sometimes as a supervisor, I have to give up the little hat I'm wearing and just understand what they're saying, and then it's a mutual thing going back and forth.
Going back and forth, right. So in this thinking, come back to Cleon. Okay.
a couple of things. Piggyback what Pastor's saying. Example: Pittsburgh Steelers, Le'Veon Bell. The offensive line stated they weren't gonna block for him. So why he gonna come back to run the ball? So I'm just saying the running back needs to hit the hole, and the offensive line needs to open up the hole for him to run. They said we're not blocked for him because he want to sit out for money. That's his right, in terms of that. But that's kind of almost like, okay, well, we're not going to listen to the coach because we don't like him. In terms of like, I slipped and I'm not going to block. Go ahead.
But it's another level because they mutually agreed that they're not going to block for him. So they have another level of mutual acceptance. They've accepted that all these people on this line, we're not blocking for him. So it's like another level of mutual acceptance, and they are willing to do whatever they need to do in order to further their goal, which is to get rid of him.
Can you
What
give
you-
an example?
Yeah, these are great examples. Pastor Edwin's example was
Everybody was wrong.
no. Pastor Edwin's example is perfect. The whole football team, we mutually accept that we want to win, and that since we want to win and we on this coach's team, we have to mutually accept what he's saying. Now, if the coach says that in order to win, we have to run 150,000 laps this season, we might not agree with that, but if we want to be a part of this team and we want to accept winning according to what this coach is saying, then we going to run these 150,000 laps this season. You see what I'm saying? We don't agree. We really don't want to do it. But we're in it. We have committed to what we're going to do, so we're going to accept what the coaches is saying. So now, but think of it like in terms of relationships with one another, not necessarily the dynamic of somebody being in charge and then everybody else accepting what they say. That's why I was saying think of it in terms of people and like the people around us. And I think that the offensive line is an even better example because these people have mutually accepted this thing that they're going to do and it's not what the coach probably wants. You see what I'm saying? It's on a different level, okay? Because they in and of themselves are brothers on this line. Now, they might not have all come from the same place. I think the military is a great example. We haven't all come from the same place. We have racists in the military. We have blacks in the military, whites in the military, Hispanic people in the military, people who barely speak English in the military. But we all accept one another enough to not let you die. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a mutual acceptance of a value and appreciation for your actual life. And when actual life is on the line, we're going to protect one another. We're going to accept you, whatever language you're going to speak, whatever God you praise. You got my back, I got your back, and we're going to kill the bad guys. You see what I'm saying? Like, we're going to accept each other. I'm not going to say, in order for me to provide cover fire for you, you must praise Jesus.
Oh, that's sad.
You see what I'm saying? Because I don't want you to tell me, in order for you to provide cover fire for me, I must praise Allah. That wouldn't be mutual acceptance. We are right here together and we're going to do what we need to do. I'm going to respect you, you're going to respect me, and we're going to go forward. So how might this translate to Paul in Rome? Who is Paul primarily talking to? Yeah, but I mean, we got categories of people back in the day. Main categories of people are Gentiles and Jews. What is Paul?
Paul is a Jew.
He is a Jew, right? And he ministers to primarily who? Gentiles. Why?
Because they're not Jews, and he wants them to know that they're accepted by God.
And that, accepted by all.
And also, who else is preaching to Gentiles?
Peter.
Other preachers that have fell.
Eventually.
Right.
Oh,
but right off, who was preaching to Gentiles? Nobody. Peter was a racist. Remember, Peter wasn't. He was like, this Jesus came for Jews, and Jews is going to heaven. Period. That was that. But eventually, Paul and Peter had a conversation, and Paul showed these other disciples what was happening and how these Gentiles were speaking in tongues and doing all this other stuff that they didn't think the Gentiles would ever do. So they all came on board with it, right? But initially, it was kind of like Paul out on a limb preaching to everybody, right? And so how do you think this whole mutual acceptance thing might play out in some of the congregations that Paul was establishing?
You're not going to be too happy.
Why not? Think about the life of a Jew and the life of a Gentile.
What's different?
I don't know. You tell me what might be some things that might be different about the daily life of a Jew versus the daily life of a Gentile.
the daily life?
Yeah.
Jews, I mean, they went through like a lot of, what's the word? I mean, they had different
Routines and rituals, and they had this law that they was, if they went around the house at the wrong time, they had to go and wash their hands, and, they had to go kill stuff, and Right, they were, a goat don't have a chance in Jewish town. It might be goats running all over the place in the Gentile land, but in the Jewish town, they about to be dead. Okay, so the daily life. What about their diets? What are Jews eating?
They eat pig or pork, right?
What do they eat now? Right, they still have dietary restrictions. It's not difficult to think about a life of a Jew and a life of a Gentile because Jews are still here and they still live like they used to, okay? So even if you're not sure, we know some stereotypical things that are kind of broadly known about Jewish people.
We don't know what Gentiles do.
Well, who were Gentiles?
Everybody else?
Everybody else.
Either Jew or you're not.
Right.
Aww.
That's right. So either you're a Jew or a Gentile. It wasn't Jews, Gentiles, and some other word. It was either Jews or Gentiles, right? Now, Gentiles could be, what do you say, CJ?
Then what are Israelites?
They're Jews.
But then what? I'm just making this up.
But listen, so Gentiles can be categorized in many different things. We had Moabites, Shiites, Hittites, Kikkites, all these other people, right? They're all Gentiles. Because if you're not a Jew, then you're a Gentile.
So that means like people in China are Gentiles.
Yes, if they weren't Jewish.
Right, unless your Jew moved to Thailand.
That doesn't make any sense. They didn't even know they were Gentiles. So why would they be called Gentiles?
That's just what Jewish people called them. That's just what it was. I don't know why they called them that. That's what it was, period. That's just the two words that we have, okay? Now, exactly. Let's mutually accept that people were in two categories. They were in either Jewish or Gentiles. So even if we can't, so let's think about it like this. We can't even come to a consensus in the church right now in this conversation about what life would have been like for a Jew versus a Gentile. How are they going to worship together? Who are these people? So think about it. We got a Jewish church or some Jews that actually believe that Christ was the Messiah. And they believe what? What are Jewish people believing? That,
Christ still hasn't come yet.
right. They're thinking this guy was kooky. Jesus was a cool guy. He did a whole bunch of miracles and everything, but we're still waiting on somebody to come and overthrow Rome. Okay? And to take these bonds of bondage off of us. That's what they were still waiting for. So Paul is looking at it and he's like, they're just not taking it. But I think I'm supposed to, he's talking to these Gentiles who are accepting it. They are becoming members of the church. They are being saved. And when we had a previous discussion, a lesson about Paul, we talked about Paul as a person who was of a heritage that is now surrounded by people who he is completely convinced are going to die and not make it in. Like he's totally convinced that nobody he knows and loves is going to make it in. So he has this earnest desire to try and he still has a heart for the Jewish people. And we're going to see his heart for the Jewish people in this text right here. So we're looking at Romans. Let's go to Romans 11:24. We'll start at 11, verse 11:11. And can you switch it to NIV, please?
Yeah.
Yep, 11:11, and then switch it to the NIV. Okay, so we want to read, let's read through 15 and we'll go back through it. So 11 through 15.
Again, I ask, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgressions, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world, and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their full inclusion bring? I am talking to you, Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I take pride in my ministry, in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. For if their rejection brought reconciliation to the world, and what will their acceptance be but life from the dead.
Okay, so let's go back up to 11 and we'll kind of walk through it. So in here, who is Paul talking to? Quiz, who understood? Gentiles. And he's asking, I ask, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Who is the they? Jews, right? Did they stumble as to fall beyond recovery? How do we know that they haven't stumbled as so far as beyond recovery? What do we know already up until this point about the history and life and times of the Bible that would have Paul be emphatic about no, not at all? What do you think?
Because they've fallen before and they've gone back up multiple times.
And what do we call that? I knew he was going to say it. Right. The sin cycle, right. You know, what'd you say? Yeah, the sin cycle, we know, we've seen that these Jews have stumbled over and over and over again and been recovered. So Paul is saying this is still, they can be recovered, right? Rather, it says not at all, rather because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. Does anybody have any story from the Old Testament that might meet this out?
Israelites and the Romans, because they had such great power, they were controlling most of everything. And Jews used to be in power,
Okay,
so they could have been envious.
possibly. Yeah, what are you going to say?
Talking about this story, or talking about the mutual acceptance?
I'm asking if we have an example of how, because of Jewish transgression, salvation has come to Gentiles to make Israel envious. Like, do we have an example of how Jews have transgressed in the past, and the Lord has allowed other people to rise up, and then maybe the Israelites are like, man, this is awful. I wish we would have done the right thing. I mean, I believe it's a bunch of examples. Because if we're talking about the sin cycle, then every one of those sin cycles is an example of that, because the Jewish people fell. They were disobedient. They were removed from the land. Their power was taken away. Their riches stripped. Somebody else rose up. What?
Is it when Moses with the Promised Land? Is that one? Whenever they kept going around and they couldn't go in there, so somebody else, the next generation could. Is that something? I mean, the next generation could go and.
Yeah, could be, but I mean, the power was taken from them totally.
I don't know what they're called, but it's they're in a bunch of them. I forgot what they're called. It's another one. They're
What's the situation about the wafers?
The wafers?
Can't think right now.
I was thinking about Saul and David. I don't know.
Saul and David?
I don't know.
Well, after we got David, we didn't lose, until way, way later. Babylon. The Babylonians came.
Babylon.
You were thinking about Babylon.
Babylon.
Yeah, who else?
Samson?
Okay.
Because he wasn't supposed to, I don't know if I'm right, but he wasn't supposed to have, any, sexual relations with anybody.
Mhm.
He cut off his dreads and he had no more power.
My dog said, cut off his dreads. I love you, CJ. He is owning that. Samson was black. Samson was a Hebrewite. No. But, okay, so, yeah, it is. Yeah, he had dreads in the movie. Okay, yeah, we could think about that too. But it's just, if we just think about, in general, I think when, like the prophecies that came true, when the Lord said, if you don't do this, I'm going to take this power from you. All these wicked kings that came to power and just stripped the Jews. You got Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, you got all these people that kind of did these things. And the Jewish people are like, whoa, what have we done? Where's God? I wish we would have, done something different. I wish we would have done something different. So maybe, what?
Aren't they beyond recovery because they're in the sin cycle? So that means every time that they get back up, they gotta fall again.
Well, let's think about that. I want you to put a pin in that, because that is an excellent question. Are they beyond recovery because they're in the sin cycle? and when they get up, they're going to fall again. Y'all keep that percolating in the back of your minds. Keep that percolating in the back of your minds. So Paul is hoping that this is yet another, in my opinion, Paul is hoping that this is yet another in a long line of Jesus rising, empowering, destroying, and then they coming back. Maybe this is what's going to happen right now, too. I hope that this is another example of my people not doing the right thing, but the Lord holding out a little bit, and then they come back because they just can't stand it. Like they just can't stand to see God, empowering other people in a place where they should be. Maybe that's what he's thinking. He says, but if their transgression means riches for the world, and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their full inclusion bring? So this is like one of those things where they got this saying that says anything that the devil used for evil, the Lord can use it for good. I feel like Paul is looking on the bright side here. No. Even though the Jews don't believe that Jesus was Jesus, because they didn't believe, the Lord has orchestrated it in such a fashion that has allowed the Jewish people to not believe. Therefore, the whole rest of the world gets the opportunity to be saved. And then back to your point and your confusion, this is why we know is Jews and Gentiles. Okay? Because this word was given to the Jewish people. Period. That's it. All throughout the Old Testament, God is talking to the Jewish people. He says that over and over again. The Israelites, my people that are called by my name, my people that worship me, my people. And we know that it's a whole bunch of other people on earth. So back then, there was no hope for these other people. They couldn't die and be born Jewish. That's not a thing. Okay? If they would have married into a Jewish household, then maybe they could have been circumcised or something like that. But for the most part, if you weren't Jewish, you wasn't about to be Jewish, period. Okay? So this says that Paul is like, well, maybe because our people, the Israelites didn't do it, now the whole rest of the world had this opportunity. But what if they turn back? He's like, just imagine for a moment. What if they do accept? What would that mean? That would mean that the promises that they had from God from the beginning would be manifested. Yeah. Plus all these other great promises and blessings for the whole world. What would that look like?
And it seems like it stops.
Yes, what would that look like? He says, I am talking to you, Gentiles. Inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentile, I take pride in my ministry. So even though he's a Jew, he's saying, I don't hold nothing. Please don't hold it against me. I'm not looking to me. He's saying I'm not looking at work, ministering to Gentiles as a slight or something, less than. I'm looking at it as a great opportunity. I take a lot of pride in what I'm doing. Right? Because it may have been people who looked down on him for talking to Gentiles. They might have judged him for talking to Gentiles. But he's like, no, I take pride in what I'm doing because I feel like I'm serving the greater good, right? Because there's way more Gentiles on earth than it is Jews. So it says, in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. So again, we see Paul's heart for his people, to hope for them to be saved, because like I said, it's indicative that he doesn't think they're going to be. Scroll up a little bit. Let's see what 15 says again. It says, for if their rejection brought reconciliation to the world, what would their acceptance be but life from the dead? I mean, that's pretty. Like, that would be a huge impact. And we're going to see even further how this could manifest itself, what this might look like if the Jewish people turned. Okay? Yes.
And definitely trying to stay on course here. To fast forward to this world today, the closest person I can ever think of besides Gandhi is Martin Luther King, when he's trying to merge all, religions and speaking to everyone as far as uplifting and letting, killing racism and informing everyone that we all have to talk to the Lord.
Mutual acceptance. We all need to accept or have a mutual acceptance of furthering life on earth. Right, just furthering life on earth in a peaceable manner. You know, that's at least a starting point. Can we at least accept that you're not going to kill me and I'm not going to kill you? You know that? Can we start there and see where we go? Okay, so scroll up. We're going to read 16 through 21.
If the part of the dough offered first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, through a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. If you do, consider this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted.
Sorry.
You all right? Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be ignorant, but tremble. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either.
Amen. Okay, so let's dissect it a little bit. Go back up to 16. He's got two different illustrations here. One is about dough and one is about an olive tree and branches. So if the part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. First fruits. This is part of Moses, instructions, God's instructions to Moses to take the first fruits of everything that they get and dedicate it back, right? Dedicate it back to the Lord. And that makes it holy. So if they do that, then everything that comes forth from that dough, from that grain that they use to make the flour, that they use to make the dough, that they then use to make the bread, makes all of it holy.
That's tithing.
Yeah, it's tithing. And so it's tithing and just dedicating themselves and part of what they're doing to God in general makes all the fruits of what comes from it holy as well. Now he's talking about if the root is holy, so are the branches. So in this illustration, what would be the olive branch? It says if some of the branches have been broken off and who is the branch? Who is the actual olive tree? And who is the wild olive shoot? What do you think?
The wild olive shoot is the Gentiles, and the actual olive tree is the Jews.
Right. Okay.
The roots are like faith in God.
Yeah. And so it says, why have some of these branches been broken off?
Because they don't believe.
Right. So they were broken off because they don't believe. Right. They were part of the olive tree. They don't believe. So they got pruned, cut off. Okay? And it says the wild olive shoots have been grafted. What does that mean?
Cut off.
Put in, like grafted in.
Okay, anybody ever got another example of a graft or heard the term graft?
Skin.
Skin graft. What do we do when somebody has a skin graft?
And put it somewhere else.
Right. So let's say you got a really bad burn on your face.
You take from your behind.
They might take it from your butt cheek or something and put it right here. But they want to take it from someplace where not a whole lot of hair grows. Some place. Well, anyway. So you want to take it, like you want to replace it with new skin. Sometimes the skin is not yours. If people have burns over large parts of their bodies, the skin might be from a cadaver, from another person that has already been deceased and donated their body to science or whatever, donated all their organs, because what's the largest organ? Bonus?
Your skin.
Right, your skin. Okay, so the skin is the largest organ, so people donate their organs, skin might be one of them. So you might be totally burned up and then you get this full body graft from another person, and then what happens?
Start connecting you.
Yeah, it heals.
It heals up.
Right, it heals up, and eventually, if you're lucky, it might be hard to tell what a graft was and begins, but most of the time, it's kind of like what? Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Like we can see a scar, we can see a line, right? So even though these wild olive shoots have been grafted into the tree, are they really in it carnally? Are they really in it as far as we can see? Spiritually, we know they're in it. But let's look at the tree. What does the tree look like?
Stitched and sewed.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this tree, let's think about the tree as a body, as a church body, okay? We got a Jewish tree, and we got these wild olive shoots that's like stitched onto it and, grafted, and they're going to grow together eventually. So it's going to fit, but kind of in a wonky kind of way. But maybe that's where the mutual acceptance comes in.
It's like those old quilts that she wants to make. She gets some material from here, from there, and they're about, I don't know how many packets, but it's a blanket. And they go
Right.
on, but it's
Exactly. Yeah.
pastels.
It's all kind of whatever, right. It's all kind of stuff. And your grandmama doesn't take like, oh, I don't want that one. No, yeah, I only want ones with polka dots on it. Like, no, the quilt has all kinds of different patterns. And that's what actually makes the quilt special and beautiful, right? And Paul is going to talk about that. But what is he warning? Because who is he talking to again? Yeah, what?
He's warning the Gentiles not to be like haughty about like them being there because they're not like the natural branches. So you should be like thankful that you're there and not be like, oh, I'm better than them Jews because you're not, because you weren't there first. But you should be grateful that you are a part of this tree. And then he was talking about faith. It made me think about Abraham because Abraham was made whole by his faith. So it's like, if Abraham was like, like he'd be out. But
Right. So, but why can't also, what's another reason you walk right up to it and paused? But what's another reason why the Gentiles shouldn't be haughty or look down on the Jews?
they weren't there originally.
Think about the tree.
Because
They could fall out too.
it's because that they were saying before, the Jews are always, because the Jews are always entangled with God.
They had no
So
leader.
Yeah.
Okay, but think about the tree. Go back to the tree illustration. Why shouldn't a Gentile wild shoot look down on a branch that's a Jewish branch?
Because they could work together.
They had no existence. They had nothing.
Who had nothing?
Gentiles.
Right. Without the Jews, there is no tree.
They had nothing.
Without the Jews, there is no tree. Like,
No beginning.
right. The wild offshoot is a wild offshoot of an olive tree, right? The olive tree is not shooting off bananas, it's shooting off olives. And one of these just happened to be planted in this Gentile that's now engrafted in the tree. So without the Jewish people, there is no tree. There is no hope for salvation because the whole thing had to come through these people. So it's like, you can think what you want to about the Jews and the Israelites, or whatever you want to call them, but without them, there would be no you. It's like, I can't stand my grandmama, okay, but without her, there would be no you. So, I mean, it is what it is. So that's why he's telling them to consider. It says, do not consider yourself to be superior than these other branches. If you do, consider this. You do not support the root. The root supports you. A wild shoot is just nothing, right? It's going to just die off without some type of stable tree to be planted into. You understand? Like, it's not you. The tree is supporting you. You coming on Johnny come lately Gentile is not what's going to make the roots. You might make the tree look pretty and fuller and different, but the wild shoot is doing absolutely nothing to these roots because the roots are planted. The roots are in the ground. The roots are what's feeding what we see. right? Yes.
And this is a prime example of the importance of parents who instill everything in their children to help them to be able to uproot and leave and be able to stand on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, always have that connection and pay attention to detail at a younger age, but they can always call back to get advice. They'll never think that you can stand alone on your own. The same as a Christian and we as a church body, when we go out and minister to others, we're a representation of life in Christ. But like the children are a representation of us.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're at school or they're doing their thing, they're not so much going to say, oh man, look at that hard-headed child. They're going to say, man. They're going to look at the parents.
Right.
Well, they need to realize that. So
That's a good example. And thank you for saying that, because we can think about it in terms of new people coming into the church, right? They might be different. They might have enlightening ideas, etc. We might be a new person going into a church. As you said, children are going to grow up. They're going to leave home. Hopefully, they'll be grafted into another body, right? They'll take their little branch and go be attached to another body. And when they get there, no matter how awesome of a Christian they are, they can't delude themselves into thinking that they are the ones that's supporting this, that they are the ones that, look at me, because I'm the best Christian in here that y'all got now. Ha ha. Yeah, guess what? But you on a tree that's planted by some roots. So you just an adornment, really. You're not the thing. The thing is what? The word.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the thing is the word. The thing is the word. You know what I mean? The pastors might be the actual tree, right? And then we got the rest, but the thing is the word. So even if the tree is cut down, we still have the word. And with the word, what can happen? Another tree can grow. Right? So that's why all of it is movable, changeable, and prunable, because the root is what is the thing, and the thing is the word of God. So let's keep going. It says, but be grafted in, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. So this is even more like talking to the Gentiles, right? Because he's saying you stand by faith, meaning you're not even a thing, right? You're like we say now, is that a thing? That's not even a thing. Like you're not even a thing. You're here because you believe, period. So you really have nothing tangible to stand on except your belief. So if you stop believing, what then? You don't even have lineage. You know what I mean? Like for them, they at least have the honor of being his chosen people. So if they add belief back into the equation, then of course they're there. You see what I mean? But we don't even have lineage. So all we have is belief. So if we start slipping in our belief, then our branch is really gone. You see? So we're all kind of treading on thin water. It says, for if God did not spare the natural branches, how, he would not spare you either. Like, yes. Right. What do you?
What I was thinking about is, it's like Paul is looking back, okay, this is what happened to the Jews. I'm going to tell you so you don't fall into that same trap that they have fallen into, the same boasting, the same, all that stuff. Now I'm trying to get you on the right path. Don't be like that.
Right. Exactly. Don't look at them and say, ha. You need to remember, right? And you need to also be mindful of yourself.
Right.
Be mindful of your own situation. Okay? So scroll down. We're going to go ahead and read 22 through 24.
consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fail, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature, and contrary to nature, were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree?
So yesterday when I was looking at this, it was very timely because I had this verse 22 was right at home. And I'm going to read, it says, I'm going to read what it says in here because there was a situation where Aiden didn't do what he was supposed to do, right? And so there was a consequence. And I was upset about it. You know, I'm like, why couldn't you just do what you're supposed to do? Because we don't like punishing our children. We don't. We can't stand it. And I was really like, I don't want to do this, but you're not going. Okay. So I was going back and forth in my mind about it. And I was, I told Cleon, I'm like, why didn't you remind him? Or you should have said something to him. And then I'm just like, I said something to him. You know, he knew good and well what he was supposed to do, and he just didn't do it. Right. And there was no way around it. So I left him home. And it says, I'm going to read what this says. Paul, they're talking about verse 22. Paul reflects that this situation reveals a paradox. God is good and severe at the same time.
Yes, he is.
While the analogy of the olive tree is still in view here, this is more akin to presenting God as a parent, which is what Cleon was alluding to earlier. Parents know there is a time to show great love and kindness to a child, but also a time when discipline is necessary.
Amen.
Severe discipline does not negate the love of a good parent. To receive the kindness, the child must be obedient.
It's called what we call reward.
To receive the kindness,
Reward.
the child must be obedient. Continuing in God's goodness is a matter of continuing in the faith. As with the unbelieving Jews, unfaithfulness risks being cut off for the engrafted Gentiles. And what is so important here is that there's a distinction that this author makes between love and kindness. Because I love you does not mean I'm always going to be kind to you.
Because I love you.
Because you need to be disciplined. Sometimes I need to be stern to you and speak sternly to you. But that is nothing to indicate that I don't love you. Do you get it? I think that's masterful how he wrote this. Parents know there is a time to show great love and kindness to a child, but also a time when discipline is necessary. So even if we take ourselves through the paces by not doing what we're told in God's eyes, and he allows us to suffer the consequences of our own decisions, that does not mean he does not love us.
Amen.
That does not mean he's not waiting for us to turn and give us another chance. You see what I mean? That doesn't mean he doesn't love us. That means actually he loves us a great deal because he's trying to save us. Just like parents love their children a great deal. That's why they're trying to save them. That's why we try to save our kids. Then it says, if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. And that's the hope. That's the hope. You're an actual olive branch. You got cut from the tree and you were growing off the tree and you got cut off. So you can lay there. You know, the Jews, he was saying, you know, Israelites, y'all can lay here. You could just be cut off from the tree, but the Lord can graft you back in if you believe. So at this point, the only thing that's holding people onto this tree is what?
Faith.
That's it. Because every single Jew that was growing on the tree and did not believe was cut off. So we're looking at a tree with no branches. Imagine that. We're looking at a tree with no branches.
I can't even imagine that.
It's gross.
Right. But one by one, the branches are coming. Because either the branch is an actual olive tree branch that is a Jew who now believes they're grafted back on, or the branch is a what?
Gentile.
A wild offshoot Gentile that's grafted on. And so it says, after all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature, so we're talking about, I think sometimes some of the most dynamic pastors are ones that didn't grow up in the church. They don't have like a frame of reference for what it's supposed to be like. All they know is they were introduced to the Word of God and they caught fire and now they're preaching, right?
More realistic.
So they don't, that to me, they're like a classic wild offshoot. They just like, whoa, this God thing is awesome. So we're going to have church on the tennis court, but it's church and God is there, so is the Holy Spirit. And that's just kind of like, if you can imagine like an olive tree that has these wild offshoots, these Gentiles that come and add flavor, they add, experience, they add food, they add all kinds of lives, experiences that the Jews have never seen because they just have the one kind of olive tree, right? But this is a branch, this is an offshoot of it. So what he is painting a picture is like, wow, when this wild offshoot actually meets the olive tree, whoa, hair on fire. Cleon and Destiny.
You gave that analogy. It makes me think of, I'm more impressed by the example that you gave about the Gentile is because you can see more familiarity, I can't even say it right now off the top of time, in comparison to where you say, oh, okay, I've been down that road before and I can familiarize with him in comparison to somebody who does a routine and they could just say these words off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to follow that.
Connect.
Or connect. In comparison, it's like, because they didn't even have, like you said, they had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably going to be on fire, because
Right.
once they introduce to like, this is all I know.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm going to follow. So their faith is going to be absolutely strong.
So, thinking about what Aiden said earlier, imagine we could take a world tour of Christian churches.
Right.
Wow. We in a church in Africa. We're in a church in Australia. We're in a church in China. We're in a church in Mongolia. We're in a church in Alaska. We're in a church, you know what I mean? Like a church in Brazil. Everybody's worshiping and praising God differently, but yet and still worshiping and praising God. So imagine when that mutual acceptance and these little wild, all over offshoots are grafted into the actual olive tree. Man, that's really powerful. What did you have, Destiny? And then Aiden.
Two things. One, it just made me think about, there's a dude in my school, his name's Jesse, but we call him Jewish Jesse because he's Jewish. Like blood Jewish, but he's a Messianic Jew.
Okay.
But his parents aren't.
Mm.
And he was talking to me about it. He was like, yeah, man, like, I'm trying to get my parents there, man, but, because he grew up just Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Then he, introduced, that he believed that Jesus was actually the Messiah, then he came to our school. And I thought it was really cool because he wears, a little David star and a little cross.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, Messianic, but he was just talking to his parents. And I'm like, man, I'm like, keep trying, bro. He's like, it's hard because they old. And I was like, dang. But then the second thing I was thinking about was what you're talking about with the Jews and Gentiles. And I'm like, maybe, the Jews felt, comfortable and what they were, because I think for the Gentiles and me being a Gentile, it's kind of now that I think about it like that, you have nothing if you ain't got faith because you weren't even born into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's probably why they grip on it so hard.
Yeah.
And then it's the Jews, I feel like they don't grip. They're just well, I'm still sitting on a floaty.
Right.
So it's
I'm entitled to go.
I'm still here.
Yes.
All I gotta do is one day to believe it, but I'm still floating. But then if a Gentile let go, they drown it. They don't know floating.
Right. They Peter walking on water. Wait, no, yeah.
They let go, they on a floating.
Exactly. Right. They still got the sin cycle that they're still in. What do you got?
I'm pretty sure, when he said that there's, when I was talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
how they're kind of not able to, how they're kind of like unable to recover.
Thank you for bringing that back.
Because like, it's just because like nowadays, like there's still like a bunch of Jews who don't believe in the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the majority of them, but some of them, like a fraction of them do believe in Jesus. But it's like, it makes you think, are some of them beyond recovery?
Well, that is a great question, Aiden, but what do we think about? What tells us that, what is the only way we're beyond recovery? There's only one way.
Blasphemy?
Right. So if they haven't done that, then they can't be beyond recovery, because like this is saying, if we look at Jews and say, oh, y'all beyond recovery, what does that say for us? The same thing. You see what I mean? So we can't ever think that anybody is beyond recovery, because at any given moment, any of us could find ourselves in a situation where we make a crazy choice and feel like we beyond recovery. But we have to hold on to God's promise, which I think I've said like every week now for the past 5 or 6 weeks, is nothing can pluck us from his hands. So we can't be beyond recovery until it's over. You know, we can't be beyond recovery until there's just like no more time, literally. But as long as we have breath and time, we can use that breath to come back, to get it right. Yes.
In the parts of my Bible with that verse, it says, God's mercy extended to both the Jews and the Gentiles. That it was a universal opportunity, conversion of the Gentiles, and restoration of the Israel.
Mm-hmm. Right. Restoring Israel.
Yeah.
And that's still the hope.
Yeah.
That's still the hope. Anybody else have anything? Have a central thought? Anybody want to read the central thought? Anybody got a book? Okay, I'll read the central thought. Central thought says, grace is always prior to salvation, and salvation cannot be earned. Salvation begins with God's response of grace to our situation and our response of faith in return. Did y'all catch that? Salvation begins with God's response of grace to our situation. So God shows us grace in the middle of whatever we're going through, in the middle of however we're behaving. He extends grace to us. It's like a big amnesty box. Do y'all have amnesty boxes at your school sometimes? They might set it up. It's like a box where every now and again they might have some issues going on at the school, and they say, hey, we're going to set up an amnesty box up here. And so whatever you have that's contraband, you can bring it and drop it in here, no questions asked. It's kind of like that gun buyback thing where you just bring a gun and you give it to the people and nobody's going to arrest you for having it. That's how God is with salvation.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how God is with salvation, because we can bring him the most horrible stuff we're doing and he was like, okay, just put it in the box. And it's our faith, when we respond in faith, of faith in return. So our response of faith in return says, I really believe you are putting this in the box and that you are really taking this from me and you really do forgive me of it, and you really can. You really can absolve me of what I just put in that box. That is awesome. It says, Paul urges that we don't focus on ourselves, instead focus on God and his plan. So we can't be in church worried about whether or not they will white gloves and whether or not that's what we should do. We just want to focus on what the Lord's plan is for everybody's life and have mutual acceptance of however they come. If it's not completely contrary to what the Word of God says, and initially it might be, but we still have to embrace and accept till they can come to an understanding through the Holy Spirit. But we have to be able to put out there mutual acceptance. Because what's the sign that they've mutually accepted us? as a body.
Like the Jews.
They came in here. I mean, like people off the street that might come in here. It's got the mutual acceptance that they accept us is the fact they came to our church. Now we have to extend mutual acceptance for whoever comes in the door in return so that the Lord can have his way.
Don't block the faith.
Don't block the faith.